Welcome to Body Wise Wednesday. I'm Josea Tamira Crossley, and I support people struggling with chronic stress to turn their stress around through connecting with the body. And I'm here today, very excited to introduce you to one of the most awakened women that I've had the honor to be in presence with. Her presence is so full of compassion, humor, and grace that I find that when coming into contact with her, it's hard not to awaken to the wonder of life. And she really rocks feminine beingness in a way that's so powerful and yet also so full of love. And she's passionate about creating safe spaces for women to experience awakening. Elizabeth Claire Burr is a senior teacher in the Vijnana yoga tradition and has been teaching for over 20 years. More recently, she's delved into the world of Hanna Somatics, which we're going to be talking about a little bit today. And her current offerings are a powerful blend of the somatics teachings and the ancient traditional practices of awakening through yoga, as well as the teachings from the Tibetan Buddhist tradition and the more progressive healing traditions of craniosacral therapy, somato-emotional release, and energetic dialoguing. So she really blends this incredible ancient and modern insight. Very powerful stuff. So welcome, Elizabeth.
Thank you.
So happy to have you here today. And we wanted to share with you today because coming up in what seems very soon, as the days get longer and we move towards summer, in July, from July 6th to 8th, we have the Awakening Joy Women's Retreat on Hornby Island at the Sundoor Yoga Studio. Awakening Joy. And so, Elizabeth, I wonder if we could start by you just sharing a little bit about what does awakening joy mean to you?
Beautiful. Awakening is a process of waking up to our true nature, to who we really are. And as we begin to wake up, we recognize what's standing in the way of that awakening. And as we awaken to joy, as we come into our connection with joy, that is our true nature. So really awakening joy is getting interested in what's standing in the way of our full connection to joy.
So does that mean maybe touching into some of the emotions and feelings or experiences in our lives that might not be so comfortable or so joyful in the beginning of contacting them?
Yeah, in terms of contacting, coming into our direct experience of whatever it is, and recognizing ourselves within that experience as joy. We come into our place, of meeting ourselves exactly where we are. We meet ourselves wherever we are, and recognize whatever is standing in the way of that joy. So we're meeting, our challenges ourselves. Basically, we're meeting ourselves, and not to shut that down. So the tendency is that when we meet ourselves with the, awareness and the, connection to joy and love, when we meet ourselves from that place, then we can start to see what's there with compassion.
And you've been practicing this for a long time through the yogic practices and the Tibetan Buddhist practices. And more recently, you've brought in the Hanna Somatics. And I wonder if you could just talk a little bit about how what is Hanna Somatics and how does that connect in with the yoga and with the awakening process?
Yeah, the awakening process. So Hanna was a teacher of awakening through the body, and basically what he articulated was he got very close to the reflex patterns in our body and was able to articulate them in a way that we could really understand. So a very simple to understand way to access very deep parts of ourselves through our body. So it's a direct experience that we experience in our body. And so we understand and know that it is real. It's a real experience. And so the awakening process happens by identifying these patterns in our being and recognizing them, having the courage to identify them and recognize them. And once identified and recognized, they come to the light of our awareness to be released, to be let go of.
Yeah.
So it's a process of purification, which is what, the meditation in the Tibetan Buddhist tradition, the yoga, in the Vijnana tradition, it's we want to get interested in what's standing in the way of joy.
Yeah, so that same process through all these different practices, like recognizing what's there, and being with it, right?
So we recognize it, and then once we can be with it, then we can understand more what's going on. Be with, and the key is to be with whatever is there with compassion.
And so you mentioned reflex patterns. So what are the reflex patterns in the Hanna Somatics?
So Hanna, what he described, or he articulated 3 main reflex patterns. There are many more, but he identified 3 of them, and they're very simple to learn and to access in our own bodies. And what they are is they're very deep places of often holding. So they're natural to the development of, from childhood to adulthood. But what happens is we hold on to them and we concretize them and we get stuck in them, basically. And so when we identify them from the point of view of the body, we're able to release them. And so he designed, very simple movements that are really, really at the root of the yoga postures. From practicing yoga postures, for over 30 years, and then coming into these very, essential practices, they unlock the yoga postures in an entirely different way. And my understanding of the yoga postures has increased through these reflex patterns.
Oh, beautiful. Yeah. So, and it sounds like it, and I've felt it in my body as well, being in retreat with you. And it's very simple. It's like almost like these 3 patterns that, I think often we think that the different ways that we can hold trauma in the body are complex, and it can feel complex, but that these 3 patterns are, we all hold in kind of these 3 different ways, and that is it that he developed movements that kind of release, very simple movements that release these 3 different patterns?
The key to the movements and the patterns, because they are very simple, is the connection between the brain and the body. So it's that somatic connection. So when we bring the brain on board and we recognize that it's an ally to this process of transformation, this was really Hanna's genius. Was he really said, let's bring the brain on board. So it's the same that we've been doing in terms of the yoga. There's just a greater awareness that when we bring the brain on board with it, it's facilitated much more easily.
Beautiful. And is the bringing the brain on board, that's done through awareness, like bringing the awareness into the body. That's too
bringing awareness to the body. Yeah. So there's simple movements that we've all done before in different ways, but when we bring the brain as an ally to these movements, what happens is that we actually repattern our neural pathways. So we don't eradicate the old neural pathways. We just lay down new neural pathways. We lay down new neural pathways, which is what we're doing all the time, but with conscious awareness. And the body understands that. And then this sensor motor amnesia becomes sensor motor awakening.
So what is sensor motor amnesia?
So sensor motor amnesia is where the sensor motor part of the brain has gone to sleep, basically. So there are parts of our being that are not fully awake, specifically in the physical body. We'll just talk about the physical body. So, we have traumas as we go through our lives, and what happens is the physical body shuts down, and then only a certain part is actually awake to be alive. And so we go into that part that's asleep, and we literally wake it up.
So it's amazing. So it's like literally what you're saying is a part of our brain forgets that our body has the ability to move a certain way,
Yes.
And so we start thinking that we only have this range of motion, where actually like, we could have like this range of motion.
Exactly.
But our brain has forgotten that we could have access to that. So it sounds like in somatic therapy, we talk a lot about like opening up more choices. So it's like you just have more choices.
Yeah, exactly.
Really,
So we have more choices like at the level of the brain. And brain-body communication so that the body then is freed. And the body, it frees itself, basically, the system, by just recognizing, the sensor motor amnesia and attending to it with awareness and with compassion. Because we all have that sensor motor amnesia. And so the process of waking it up is one, we walk through the doorway of compassion. So we cultivate compassion for ourselves, for our bodies. And as women, this is huge. We live in a culture where we are, to say the least, not compassionate around our bodies.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so, I know, like, I've been working with Elizabeth for it's been 10 years. Hey. And that's been one of the biggest pieces that I think you've helped me bring in, is just how key compassion is in the healing process. Because our tendency, or maybe it's like what we learn in Western culture, is that as soon as we feel something that's uncomfortable, or, that we perceive as painful or bad or whatever, is we judge ourselves. And then that judgment basically puts a lid back on it and pushes it back down. So it's maybe a thing comes up and is ready to have awareness, and then we're no. But this practice of bringing in compassion just, allows so much to open. And even just, I think, Elizabeth, the space that you create, and that was really tangible in the retreat on Hornby last year, but just even the land there is such an incredible container of safety and compassion, and then the space that you, the container that you create is just so tangibly so compassionate that, I remember last year the women were just feeling just so safe. Everyone just felt so safe to be able to touch into places that, for many of them had never let themselves go there before,
Exactly. Yeah. And that safety is very key in this work. We establish a clear, safe container for women to wake up to themselves. And this is literally what we're doing, and coming into that safety in a container, we learn to bring that safety to ourselves, because really that safety is not something that we've learned. We feel as women, myself, included, I have felt that I was not even safe with myself. And as I come in, develop that safety, that compassion, it's basically a gateway into greater awareness of self, letting go of things that are standing in the way of of our highest good, for others, for our families, for our children, our lovers, others.
Yeah. It's almost just a sense of allowing what, when we come into that container of safety, just then we can just allow ourselves our both our not so beautiful, what feels, the stuff that feels uncomfortable to come out and then dissolve, as it does when it comes into the light, and then the beautiful, the joy, and just,
so we recognize and welcome all parts of ourselves, and in that recognition, in recognizing, the parts of ourselves that maybe we've pushed away, pushed down in our body, as they begin to come back up again within a safe container, they have the ability to rise up. We meet them with compassion and awareness. And with that awareness, we're able to let them go. And this is literally the process of enlightenment. We're enlightening, we're allowing these things that we've stored down in our bodies, in our hearts, in our minds, that are quite heavy on us, and as we open into a safe container, we can let whatever is there that wants to come up in order to let go of it, to release it.
Beautiful.
It's a very powerful process.
Yeah. And it's I think like it's almost like in a conceptual way, trying to understand it conceptually is tricky, because it's like, oh, well, compassion, but I'm used to being really hard on myself. And so it may be hard to understand that. But the amazing thing that I have found with working with you and, working through the body is that it's like, we don't have to really understand it with our mind. Exactly. Because the body is just all there. And so when we come into that safe container, especially into retreat, and I'd love if you could just talk a little bit about, what retreat is and, this retreat specifically, and what that is. But it's like just that when we're working through the body, it just comes. We don't have to be able to figure it out. So just any of you who are listening and who are thinking, oh, I don't know if I can do that, it's like, it's not really whether you can or can't, it's whether you have the courage to show up.
Yeah, exactly. And simply that's it. We have the courage to show up. We go to retreat. So retreat is the time where we dedicate time and space, to ourselves. Mm-hmm. And as women, we're dedicating our time and our energy and our space to many others all the time. Yeah. So this is a women's retreat. And so it's the time and the space to come together, to really turn inwards and just look at what's there with compassion and with skillful means. Mm-hmm. So the practices, I've received from so many amazing teachers, and my main teachers have really showed me that it's with compassion and skillful means that we allow whatever is wanting to come forward, to be recognized, acknowledged, and then let go of. So it's literally a process of purification. Yeah, exactly. And once the whatever we let go of, then what's left, what remains, we get interested in that. Mm-hmm. Who we truly are. Mm.
Yeah, beautiful. And I love how you said in the beginning that like joy is our natural state. It's our true nature, just in that joyful state. And I was thinking this morning, as I was thinking about coming towards this interview and talking to you, and I was just thinking about how like I think when I first started to touch into that, I remember like learning how to grieve in a way that, like I remember grieving in a way that where I could also feel like this sense of love, or like, I don't know if I would quite call it joy, because there was also like deep grief there, but it's almost like a sense of there's just this like openness that can be available to us through all the emotions, no matter what it is. Because I think often, or sometimes we have the idea that like, I'll purify and then I'll only feel joy. Uh-huh. Or happy.
Yeah. Well, joy, is our essence. Like that is, love, joy. That's our essence. That's who we are. And it's, it's like the old story about the stone that's fallen in the mud, and basically what we're doing is we're just clearing off the mud and we're recognizing what we already are, which is this beautiful jewel. As we get closer to it, may look like a little gray stone on the outside, or then, we get right into it. And so it's a process. Yoga is a process of revealing who we truly are.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Love that. Yeah. So can we tell us a little bit more about the actual retreat?
Yeah. So we get to go to Hornby Island, which is one of the most beautiful outer islands in BC, and it has a very strong tradition of healing. It's an island that the First Nations tradition was. They went there for healing, and so already in the land there's healing, and we get to travel to a beautiful piece of land that a dear friend of mine, Diane Smith, has been developing into a healing center, and she has an incredibly beautiful space there, and for us to practice.
It's amazing. Like having been there last year, I would say that land even particularly is especially just like, I mean, Diane's a midwife, right? So it's just like a womb, and the floor of the studio is earth and floor, and it's just like you just feel like you're in the womb of the earth there. So it's such an incredible container for just like rebirthing, really.
Yeah. Awakening. Yeah. And so that, within that container that's already been set up and held sacred by Diane, then we create a safe container as a group together to just look at what's wanting to come forward. You know, and we take the time through the traditional practices, you know, so we're going to be practicing, you know, sitting meditation, practicing breath work, pranayama, coming into movement, you know, the somatic movement, which is really the root of the asanas. We can come into, you know, greater connection with what's going on, listening. It's really a process of listening and then allowing whatever is there to come forward with compassion. So we're really, you know, we're awakening that that compassionate part of our beings. And Lana Marie is going to be co-facilitating it with me and offering her creative work and piece.
Right, and Lana Marie Willow, and she's also a therapist, a somatic therapist.
Yes, she is. She's a somatic therapist too, as well. So she's completely in the same energy space as yourself and myself. And so we're going to be creating a really clear, strong container for people to wake up in their bodies and feel and sense what's going on for them.
Beautiful.
And let go of it.
Yeah.
You know, this is what purification is, right? And purification, once we let go, there's that joy, that celebration that comes up in the newness that is not actually new, but it's really true self. Yeah.
Beautiful. Yeah, and it does feel to me like a sense of kind of like rebirthing, and especially being July 6th, 7th, 8th, I think it is. Is that right?
Yes, 6th, 7th, 8th. Yeah.
Like shortly after the summer solstice. So we're kind of really in that peak summer time.
Yeah.
And Hornby is just so beautiful, and the land there is so beautiful, and such a beautiful sacred container, and really an opportunity to just, you know, I loved what you said, Elizabeth, about just take time out of, because as women we're used to just serving, you know, serving our children and our families and our, you know, our careers and our world, and to just, you know, to take time out for ourselves to come into that sacred container, you know, and that, you know, what I've found is that by, you know, over the years stepping into these kind of containers on a regular basis is really what has allowed me to, I mean, it's also the daily practice, but going into those deeper containers is what allows us to like really peel back a layer and then bring that new self into what that is the old self, you know, that is really our old self, our true self, into more of our true self, you know, back to our lives. And you know, and it's such an incredible place to just I want to say evolve, but really it's also just, you know, just like peeling away and becoming more of ourself.
Becoming more of ourselves. You know, it's such a beautiful process because, you know, there's this idea, or I think in the beginning when I first sort of came to these practices, I thought that I was going to become someone else, or, you know, I had this feeling of like there's like a better me out there, you know, or something like that. And as I recognized it, was like, oh, I'm becoming more myself. Like self is waking up, you know, and in that process, you know, with the safe container, with like-minded women who are on this path of awakening, when we come together to support each other, very powerful. You know, we as women are incredible supporters.
Yeah.
You know,
right. Yeah.
we have that capacity innate in us, and when we wake that up and we gather together in circle and we support each other. And we say, yes, like go where you need to go. I'm here to witness that. You know, so it's a co-created container, you know, with yourself, with myself, with Lana Marie, with the creativity opening up, you know, really getting to look inside what's really going on. How do I really feel? You know, the emotional piece, you touched on to that, you know, a little bit. So we're attending to the physical body, the emotional body. We're attending to our spiritual body. What is that? You know, what is our spiritual body? You know, getting curious. We cultivate a sense of curiosity towards our practice. And with that sense of curiosity, we start to wake up.
Beautiful.
You know, to who we truly are.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I think we can tend to kind of put ourselves on the side, to the side, or on the back burner as women, and I almost see it, you know, in the times that we're living in. It's like I feel like we almost have a responsibility to step into these kind of containers and give ourselves the space to wake up and, you know, come into who we truly are, because, you know, it's like, who else is going to do that for us? Nobody else is going to do that for us. And I just always come back to, you know, the Dalai Lama saying that it will be Western women who change the world, and the awakening that has to come first before we can make real impact or real change in the world, I believe. And so I wonder if there's one thing that you want to leave our listeners with today, Elizabeth. Just
well, please come and join us in this awakening. You know, it's like Josea said, it's, you know, women, we're on the forefront of this awakening that's happening right now, and we don't even really know what it is.
Yeah.
You know, we can feel it though, right? We're all feeling it. We're like, oh, I want to step up. I want to understand myself more. And, you know, and this is really, this process of awakening and waking up is happening everywhere to all of us.
Yeah.
And in retreat, we basically accelerate that. You know, we gather together to support each other, to accelerate this awakening that is, you know, already happening.
Yeah.
For all of us. Yeah. And that's what I would say.
Exactly. Gorgeous. Thank you. Yeah, so definitely join us. To register, you can email Elizabeth at info@elizabethclaireburr.ca. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'll send the link out, or her email out with this video. So you should actually see it just below the video here in the blog. And yeah, join us July 6th, 7th, and 8th on Hornby Island at Sundoor Yoga Studio for the Awakening Joy Women's Retreat with Elizabeth Claire Burr, Lana Marie Willow, and myself. So hope to see you there. Blessings, and have an amazing week. It's been another Body Wise Wednesday. Mwah.